Hey everyone, welcome back to your favorite sales podcast. I'm your host, Ross Rich, and today we have a very special guest. We have Jeff Rosset, who is the CEO of a company you might have heard of, Sales Assembly. Big fans of them, and appreciate you taking the time today.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I don't know how special of a guest I am, but I am a guest and I'm here and I'm excited.
Awesome, awesome. Well, before we get into what the regular scheduled program is, talking about ways to operationalize deal excellence, maybe to get to know you a bit. How did you find your way into the world of sales and of founding Sales Assembly?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in sales pretty much my whole career. Going back to college, I started my own business for a couple of years when I was in college, and it was sales was obviously part of what I had to do back then. Took a job out of college in a sales role. Started a couple of businesses in my 20s, nothing that really stuck. I kind of bounced back and forth between being a salesperson, going and being an entrepreneur, going back and being a salesperson after my business idea failed, getting bored as a salesperson or antsy and going back and trying to start a new business. So was always just this push and pull every couple of years. And then, you fast forward to pretty much 2016. That's where the sales assembly story really started to begin. I was pretty plugged into the tech ecosystem in Chicago, and I was working for a tech company at the time in sales. And the company went through a layoff. I was let go, trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. But I had built my career just, focused on relationships, bringing people together. I had actually started a nonprofit a couple of years prior that was a collection of a bunch of like socially minded entrepreneurs in Chicago, where we would get together, we would do social activities, we would do stuff to benefit the business community. So bringing people together was always kind of like my forte. And I kind of just came up with this idea that knowing the ecosystem like I knew it, uh, there was a lot of really awesome tech companies in Chicago that were raising money and they were growing and they were trying to scale their business. And this was 2016, 2017. And they were
Mhm.
all trying to do the same things and figure out answers to the same questions and solve the same problems, but they were doing it all in a silo. There was
Mhm.
no mechanism that brought them together that allowed them to share ideas and ask each other questions and say, hey, I'm trying to spin up an enterprise BDR team for the first time. How have you done it? Everybody was just relying on, random webinars and Googling answers. So came up with the idea to create a mechanism that brought folks together. At the time, the only thing similar to that, there was like a couple of events on meetup.com. If you were, I don't even know if that website still exists, but that was like the only thing available in Chicago. And you had organizations like SaaStr out west, but nothing in the Midwest, nothing in Chicago. So we spun it up, had our first event in early 2017, and been doing it ever since. So coming up on 7 years now.
Awesome.
A lot of fun. It's been great, and yeah, it's been quite a ride.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, sounds like, yeah, your passion for sales and bringing people together and supporting groups definitely led to this. But yeah, any of the key things that you hear from sales leader continue to come up from those last 7 years? Obviously, the last 18 months has been very different than 2020 and 2021. Like, any themes that you feel like are just always true when it comes to revenue leaders?
Yeah, I think the things that are always true, and I could certainly drill down into the last year and a half because it is definitely a tale of two tech ecosystems, as we all know, and companies and leaders are going about building and thinking about their businesses in a much different way today. But a couple of things that are consistent that haven't changed. Experience is key. Leaders that have experience having done certain things, it's a quality, it's a benefit that you can't replicate without it. And having, leaders that have gone through ups and downs, especially people that were in the workforce back in the dot-com boom or 2008, they know how to navigate changes. They know how to communicate to their teams when things are going up and down. I think companies and leaders that have been able to pivot and make a lot of the right decisions over the past couple of years are ones that are led by people that this is not the first time that they've faced some significant adversity. Um,
Mhm.
Another component that's just true today as it was when I started my business 7 years ago is the power of peers and relationships and an ecosystem. It's incredible the cheat code that you find when you're able to talk to people who are in a similar role or even a rung above where you are, that have been there, done that, and that have taken their lumps and either solved a problem or failed at solving a problem, that could give you advice, a playbook, a template, whatever the case might be. And sometimes it's as simple as just emotional support. It might be less about let me email you a template and more about like, let me, happy just to talk through what you're facing right now and remind you that you're not going through this for the first time ever. Like other people have tried to solve this problem or swung and missed and they have to figure it out. So experience is so important. Community is so important. And I think a lot of the success that especially sales leaders, revenue leaders today experience, like could really be drawn back to those two components.
Totally. Yeah. It's funny when you mention kind of the latter in terms of the shared experience of leaders. I feel like it's such a cathartic, moment outside of the tactical tips and like, here's how to do it, of just that emotional support that I find really impactful when you talk to peers trying to do the same things. Just kind of, I find it very energizing to know
Yeah.
that you're not alone.
Yeah, I mean, I had a call yesterday or the day before, earlier this week, with a fellow CEO friend of mine, and we've been friends for a long time, and we were just catching up for the first time in the last like 6 or 7 months, and it was amazing just sharing how parallel our business trajectories were, during 2020, 2021, 2022, when like everything was up and to the right, every decision that we were making seemed to be the right ones, things were
Yeah,
really well. And then 22, 23, tides changed a little bit. And it's amazing. Totally different industry. They're a larger company than we are, but if you were to plot it on like a graph, everything would look very similar. And it's just, you hang up a call like that and you're just like, wow, I'm not as big of an idiot as I thought I was. Like other smart people are going through the same struggles that you are. And it's just the name of the game in business, right?
totally. Yeah. It's that sustained energy, passion. How do you keep that up? It's not just, working out, sleeping well, et cetera. It's that community is super important. Maybe
Yeah.
that's a good moment to shift gears into, kind of the meat of things today. We're going to talk about these 3 tips you have for operationalizing, deal and company excellence. Where do you think we should start? We got 3 today. We got making decisions based on data. We have understanding yourself, your business, your persona, and we have continuous learning and skill development. What do you think a good place to start is, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the biggest um, the biggest thing that I continue to hear about in conversations, and we just had a big conference last week here in Chicago. We had about 140 VP and C-level revenue leaders at an in real life event, and this theme was pretty persistent. I'd say number two, it's like the way that I had communicated it to you in prep for the call was just understanding yourself and your business and your persona. But to take it one level deeper, like the understanding is one thing. The word that I would use that is like consistently coming up over and over and that I feel is just truly impactful right now is focus.
Mm,
Focus is such a key, and it can be applied in so many different ways. But when you think about what revenue organizations have gone through over the past year and a half and kind of where they're heading, the team sizes are likely smaller. The tool resources and budget allocation is significantly smaller. The
mhm.
idea of doing more with less, which was the buzz phrase for the last couple of years, it very much is in some way, shape or form a reality. Um, and what you cannot do when you have limited resources from a budget, a tool, and a headcount standpoint is lose focus. So if you're the type of business, for example, that has never gotten results on cold outbound, and you now have a BDR team that has gone from 11 people to 3, and your AEs are also now responsible for generating their own pipeline because you don't have the BDR team that you used to. If you know that you don't have a lot of success traditionally on cold outbound, you're going to have to sit there and think about what are the other ways that we're going to be able to generate pipeline that work for our business. Is that going to conferences? Is that hosting dinners in different cities and inviting your ICP to come out and meet with you in person? Is that sponsoring webinars with partner organizations? Is that putting together your own podcast and getting thought leadership out on LinkedIn and YouTube and Instagram and whatever the case might be? The point is, it's critical for organizations to have a good understanding as to like what makes them unique, what works
Hmm.
for their business. If you're a Series A company selling a MarTech solution, just because there's a Series C company in logistics tech that is having success in one area on the go-to-market side, that does not mean that you have to follow suit and do the same thing that they're doing. And I think a lot of keeping up with the Joneses or just like following the standard playbook in 2020, 2021, when everyone was raising tons of capital, and you would see on LinkedIn about every company that was hired, so many companies were following the same playbook. And it was working when you had an opportunity to manufacture revenue by hiring more people and adopting new tools and spending more money on marketing. But when that's no longer the case, you have to get really specific as to what works with you. And I would kind of like sum that all up with understanding about your business and then proper focus.
Totally. Yeah, it's a good call out that everything from channels to your product to your ICP changed a lot relative to the way people were buying and doing business, and kind of refocusing on, what really works is really important. I mean, we moved over, it just reminds me, we had 2 or 3 headcount for SDRs. We moved that over to CS because we're finding that people wanted to take less of a risk. So we're closing smaller deals, but we could get them to expand really quickly. So instead of focusing on top of funnel, lower win rates, but higher ACV, lower ACV, partner with the customers to grow. And you just have to kind of, yeah, very first principles type of thinking in this type of market to effectively win, right?
Yeah, and that's a great example. So a company might have advisors or board members that are pushing them to grow new logo acquisition, hire more reps to drive top of funnel, spend more money on marketing. Whereas the unlock might be, you know what, let's actually hire a couple of really solid AMs that are going to be able to land and expand and turn a $25,000 ACV deal into a $200,000 ACV deal within the next 18 months because we're doing the right things from a product marketing and a land and expand standpoint. And so again, you have to know your business, and you guys, you understand your business, you know what works, and you're going to lean into those things, and you're going to focus on those things, and that's what's going to help companies win.
Totally. And maybe that's a good transition into making decisions based on data instead of maybe intuition, or like you said, keeping up with the Joneses, what that other company that might even be in a different space be. How do you think about that when it comes to growing revenue?
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting one because every revenue organization worth their weight is going to say that they track data, right? Everyone's got HubSpot or Sales.
Yeah.
Everybody's got a couple of tools that, they're analyzing things. Everyone's trying to be really specific with how, they do attribution for marketing, and we're tracking our sales cycle, we're tracking, our close rate. We have all of our unit economics that we're paying attention to. But when push comes to shove, I think a lot of companies fall into the trap of they track the data and then they go back to whatever they feel most comfortable with because they either don't want to
Yeah.
accept what the data is telling them or they don't know how to properly utilize the information. And I think that's where a lot of companies, especially now where resources are tighter, maybe they don't have a RevOps person. Maybe they don't have somebody, again, going back to my point earlier about experience, who has been through an economy where you don't have unlimited resources to be able to figure things out. Every decision that a revenue leader makes today is so much more impactful than it used to be because you don't necessarily have an opportunity to try it again in 6 months. If you allocate budget or go all in on a certain idea and it doesn't work, that might be the last bet that your company is willing to allow you to make. And so it's tracking the data. That's the easy part, right? In 2024, there's a million tools that track every type of data that you want. It's interpreting the data, it's understanding how to utilize the data, and then it's being self-aware enough as to what data you should actually implement. So, professionals like RevOps, smart leaders that are in enablement have the same mentality. Front, second, executive level, marketing, sales, customer success leaders, whoever's in charge of the organization and whoever's being held responsible for a number and for results, they have to make sure that they are looking at the information every single day and then being honest with themselves about what they are going to do with it.
Totally. Yeah, and that increased level of accountability, I feel like, is kind of at the forefront of kind of that change in the market that you're talking about, right? Like, how accountable were you to your inputs and outputs, or was it just easy? And like you said, do we just feel like we're making the right decisions before from our intuition because everything is up to the right? What happens when that's not the case?
Yeah. And I think especially marketing teams right now. I mean, marketing had such an interesting scenario a couple of years ago, especially in B2B when, the companies were raising so much money that marketing teams had budgets that were so inflated where they could spend money on pretty much anything that they wanted. And I remember that we used to get calls towards the end of the year from marketing teams where they're like, hey, I got like 150 grand left over in my budget. If I don't use it, I'm going to lose it. So like, is there anything that you guys are doing that we could sponsor here in Q4? And obviously those
That's
are
wild.
great calls for us to take, but that's not happening right now. Like we're not getting those calls. Not a lot of people are getting those calls right now. And but when a marketing budget is sliced in half or a third or a fifth that it used to be, you better make sure that if you're spending money on a trade show, it's going to freaking work. And you're in the right trade show in front of the right ICP and you have the right follow-up metrics afterwards. And are you making that decision based on what happened earlier over the past couple of years? Did you get business that you could quantify and that you could attribute directly to the trade show? And if you didn't, maybe that's not the right approach to take. And so I feel like every revenue team is going to be scrutinized with how they spend money and how they analyze data and make decisions. But marketing specifically, definitely taking a different look at things these days.
Totally. Well said. Yeah, it's if you were trained kind of in the era of everything being easier and investments being unlimited, definitely a hard pivot there. But yeah, maybe last one, shifting gears to the importance of continuous learning and skill development. Obviously, at the forefront of what you guys do at Sales Assembly. Why do you
Yeah,
think that's so important to teams winning?
sure. Yeah, and this isn't a pitch about our service. I mean, we're certainly experiencing an uplift right now here in 2024 because so many companies are faced with the idea that like, hey, we have to grow top line revenue and we have to be more efficient and effective, but we're not going to grow top line because we're hiring more people. We're going to grow top line because we're able to get more revenue out of each employee that we have. And again, this is
Yeah,
a mindset that's a little different than the last couple of years. And so, how are companies growing revenue or reducing churn without adopting new tools and without hiring new people? It's by making the people that they have on their team more effective. And whether you are a member of Sales Assembly or your leaders are involved in a community like Pavilion, or you adopt a methodology like Challenger or MedPIC or whatever the case might be. It doesn't matter what you do. It's the organizations that are focused on development and putting their people into a position to be as efficient and effective as possible. Those are the companies that are building sustainable businesses for the future, not just companies that are going to drive revenue in 2024, but like they are building the culture and the framework that's going to allow them to steadily grow year over year in a responsible way that is not reliant upon raising money, adding headcount, adopting new tools. And whether it's your AMs, it's your CSMs, it's your BDRs, it's your account executives, it's your marketing team, it's your first and second line managers, it's your VPs and C-level folks. Nobody is immune to the idea of you need to continue to develop your skills, whether it's classroom training, whether it's listen to podcasts while you're walking your dog, whether it's you're involved in a community of peers where you can share ideas. Anything works, better than nothing, but focusing on skill development and up leveling performance, hugely important right now.
what do you think the key skill gap is to be successful in 2024 for like frontline sellers and CSM, people dealing directly with customers that um, are focused on, preventing a churn or doing an upsell or landing a new logo?
Yeah. So, with Sales Assembly, we So we have 16 different skills that we certify on. And these are spread around all personas within the revenue organization. And obviously, somebody in my position, I'm talking to leaders all the time around like what they're working on and some of the issues that they're facing. I'd say out of those 16 skills, and they range from negotiation to value articulation to risk mitigation to cold communication, so many. The one that comes up most often, and sometimes it's not even articulated properly because leaders don't necessarily know what it is that their people are lacking, but they know that it's missing, is deal management. And I'm talking about, things like being able to properly multi-thread within an account, being able to properly infuse and drive urgency throughout the sales cycle,
Mm.
properly communicating value and leveraging mutual action plans, doing proper discovery to get the deal off on the right foot in the first place. A lot of bad habits were formed over the past couple of years when opportunities would come in, they would be dropped onto your calendar from either an inbound or a BDR. And the company on the other end had budget and they had done their research and they were just like, I got to sign up for something. How much does it cost? Now sales cycles are longer, there's more decision makers in the process, and you have to show ROI in order to win a deal. And running that deal process, the idea of deal management is just so foreign to a lot of sellers that have come up over the
Mm.
past handful of years. And they really struggle with understanding, how do I get buy-in from other stakeholders? How do I drive urgency when a deal stalls out at the proposal stage? And I think that's going to be a key unlock for a lot of companies because they could drive top of funnel, and when there's interest on the other end, they can close the deal. But how do you get it from discovery to negotiation? Like that's the money area that a lot of sellers are struggling
Yeah.
with right now. And when they figure out some of those unlocks, they're seeing a lot of success because win rates are going up and deal cycle length is decreasing.
Well said. I think it's that middle funnel activity is probably the weakest I see from reps up there, and I think the translation I do in my head when I hear you talk through that is really the deal control and the product management. Is okay. You might start with this one person and kind of this problem. Now, how do I proactively go to the right people? How do I articulate the problem better than they can to the executives? Because this person probably is going to tell a compelling story to them to get the budget unlocked or to get the resources on this and really do sales instead of order taking, which I think a lot of people conflated with
Yeah.
sales and deal execution in the last, I mean, not just 2020 and 2021. I mean, years before then, everything kind of felt easy. And yeah, it's definitely an uphill battle now to unlock that
Yeah.
budget.
Yeah, you make a good point between conflating order taking and sales. And what makes a good salesperson is not like, sell me this pen, and not being like the witty, on your feet, person from Wolf of Wall Street. It's not the person that's like the hardcore hostage negotiator at the end of the sale. It's somebody that could provide value, work their way through an organization, run an effective sales process, and make everybody involved in the process feel as if they are winning. Like that is the sense of like a true professional salesperson. There's not enough of those people out there. The ones that could do that, they're the ones that are exceeding quota and making a lot of money.
Completely agree. It's still very possible out there, but you definitely need to kind of up level your game to hit those targets. Well, before we wrap, Jeff, want to hit our usual rapid fire questions. I'm going to ask you a few questions and looking for either one word or one sentence answers. Are you ready?
Cool. Let's do it.
All right. What do you think the main reason teams are missing their AR targets this year?
Focus.
What is your favorite resource related to revenue leadership? And it can't be sales assembly.
My favorite resource related to revenue leadership. Um, Gosh, that's good. I'm not going to say something specific. I'm going to say in-person events. It's the energy that has been brought back to in real life events is fantastic. People are coming out, they want to meet with people, and that's where you just have the candid 5 to 7 minute conversations over a cup of coffee that you just don't get via Slack. You just don't get by listening to a podcast.
Totally agree. It's the stuff that sticks. What is your favorite segment to sell into? SMB, mid market, or enterprise?
I've never really sold into enterprise in my career, so I can't really speak to that. I'd say, you know, I like the small deals. I like deals that, you can sink your teeth into and really relate to. So, SMB, mid-market, there's a blend there for me.
Totally. What is your favorite way to unplug from the demands of leadership?
Uh, I'm a big whiskey drinker. So, and you can apply that question to how do I deal with my kids at home? No, I'm joking. It's yeah, I like to um have a cocktail every now and again. I've been known for that. I like to work out occasionally. My physique these days wouldn't tell you that, but I do Peloton and like to go outside and run. I avid runner. And then I'm just like I love my friends, and I'm just I'm always grateful when I can just get out of the house and go to a Cubs game or hit the casino or just go out for dinner with my buddies. I'm still very close with a lot of friends from high school that still live in the Chicago area. So just being able to unplug mentally and just kind of like BS a little bit, it's always a good unlock for the old brain.
Totally, totally. Well, Jeff, I really appreciate you taking the time to share some of your learnings and, from talking to hundreds of revenue leaders and kind of hear what's top of mind for a lot of folks. So this was awesome. And yeah, appreciate you sharing it with the community.
Yeah, thanks, man. This is great. I like what you guys are doing at Accord. Really interesting tool that's needed right now. So for those listening, check out Accord. It's a great tool for revenue teams. And yeah, thanks for having me on. I had a blast.
Of course. All right. Take it easy.